Okay, the last lessons we've kind of been looking at in physics, we've been looking at forces and how they kind of change motion. Over the next few weeks, we're going to look more into the motion side of things rather than the forces. And today we're just going to encounter something. Maybe you have done this in maths. I'm not sure if you have or not by this stage, but we'll start off with talking about speed. Okay, speed is really a measure of how fast an object is going, and we use the letter S to represent it in physics. So we might say something like the speed is 5 meters per second. And all that means is that an object will cover a distance of 5 meters each second. So the distance covered would be 5 meters in a time of 1 second. But let's say it kept at the same speed, but instead it did that for a time of 2 seconds. So we cover 5 meters in the first second. It's traveling at a constant speed. It would travel another 5 meters in the next second. So the overall distance would be 10 meters. Now we can put that together into a nice little formula. So we would say that distance equals speed times time, or more commonly this is written in physics as speed is equal to the distance divided by time, and that's what we're going to stick with. Now I understand in maths when you get equations sometimes you can be encouraged to kind of put them into little triangles that make your life a little bit easier. So we can put this equation into kind of triangles, something like that. And what it tells us is if we look for one of these, so if we look for distance, distance is equal to speed times time. However, if we then say look for something like speed and kind of forget about it in our triangle, it tells us that it is distance divided by time. And if we look for time, so we forget about that in our triangle, it tells us that time equals distance divided by speed. Now that works well, and if you want to use it, you can use it. If you use it in maths, you can use it. I don't recommend using triangles in physics for the reason that not every formula fits into a triangle. And if you start using triangles for simple formulas like this, later in life when you move on to some kind of more difficult equations that don't fit in triangles, then you haven't learned the basics of how to manipulate formula with easy equations, and then it gets very difficult with these ones. So I would just stick with learning off this equation here. Okay, speed equals distance divided by time, and then learn to manipulate that to get your answer. So let's look at a few example questions. So let's say we have an object that covers a distance of 20 meters in a time of 10 seconds, and we're trying to find the speed. Write out your equation. Gives us 20 divided by 10, which is 2, and then we did meters divided by seconds. Okay, let's look at something a little bit different. Let's say we have a distance of 200 meters and a speed of 10 meters per second, and we're trying to find the time. I would just write out the same equation again, speed equals distance divided by time. Write it out again, but put in my numbers, so speed is 10 equals distance divided by t. Now I'm trying to find this thing that I'm dividing by. That's tricky. So what I do is I make my life easier. I multiply both sides by time, and that gives me 10t equals 200. But I'm trying to find out what 1t is, so I divide this side by 10. If I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other. So it gives me that the time is 20 seconds. Okay. The only other way we can be asked questions on this is if you are given the speed. Let's say it is 3 meters per second, and you're given a time of 12 seconds, and you're trying to find a distance. Do the same thing. Write out the equation, speed equals distance divided by time. Write it out again, but put in the values. Okay, you can see on this side we're trying to find out what d is, but at the minute we're dividing it by 12. We know that's 3, so we multiply this side by 12, multiply the other side by 12, and that gives us 3 times 12 equals the distance. So the distance is 36 meters. Okay, relatively straightforward, particularly if you have seen this before in maths. So go away, read the notes, try the questions, and then the second half of this lesson we're going to look at speed time graphs.